Hey everybody, my name is Morgan, and this is FrameShift.org.
3, 2, 1.
You ever notice how hard it is to get people to speak the truth? To hear the facts? To be reasonable? You ever notice how hard it is just to be understood? To communicate with people? To share a sense of meaning? Problems like this aren't about stupidity or insanity, evil or moral failings, weakness of character, personal traumas, witchcraft. It's just human nature, really, plain and simple. One of the blessings of human nature is also a curse. We have this penchant to dream, to live out the world in our imagination, and not so much on the ground. In fact, we need to dream so bad we can deny facts that are right in front of us. And not just Ann Coulter. No group has a monopoly on delusion or rationality. Not Catholics or atheists, Republicans or Democrats, sane people or insane ones. No, not even Ann Coulter. This is something that affects us all, and it impedes change in politics, religion, economics, healthcare, mental health, even our personal desire for growth and well-being. That's why becoming more rational is really the wrong metaphor. What we need to do is evolve our dreams to make them more realistic, more grounded, bigger, more beautiful while we're at it. But how do we do that? The first step is to understand them. And happily, that coincides with the needs of the second step, which is to build better models. Models aren't about facts. Facts can be cherry-picked based on whatever dream you happen to have. Models organize and integrate information into evolving frameworks that we can agree on and believe in. And that's why we here at FrameShift.org have been working for the last 10 years to create a model that can be the foundation for all of our diverse collective goals. A model of human nature and shared meaning. A model of our collective paradigms. A story that's at once biological, cultural, and evolutionary that tells us where we've been and where we're going. And that's why today we bring you the first in a 4-part series that lays the foundation of that model. This is Dopamine 101, the introduction to a story of hopes and dreams. We've been told that we like dopamine, but that's not true. We need it. Dopamine activity in the brain sustains motivation. When the chemistry dips, so does our ability to get our ass out of bed in the morning. The less dopamine activity, the less pleasure, motivation, or ability to care. And that means boredom. But what starts as boredom can get much, much worse. Depression. Under the threat of depression, what starts as a need becomes a drive. At any given moment, people will do whatever it takes to keep our dopamine high and avoid the chemical debt of depression. Lucky for us, evolution's given us a way to avoid the chemical slump of depression, interacting with the world itself. We get dopamine in 3 ways. Unpredictable events, anticipation of future rewards, and attaining those rewards. For instance, new experiences or novelty gives us dopamine, and that makes things like curiosity, adventure, humor, and risk-taking rewarding. Anticipation of future rewards also gives us dopamine, and that makes things like goals, dreams, faith and hope, and ideas rewarding. Finally, actually attaining rewards releases dopamine, and that makes things like sex, drugs, and rock and roll pretty rewarding. But that's just scratching the surface. Far more abundant are things like social rewards. Status is a big one. Friendship, altruism, laughter, accomplishment, learning, creativity, surprise, music, fun, conversation, love. These are the rewards that make life worth living, social rewards that most of us use for the fuel to get through each and every day. They're renewable resources, and as we'll see, they're found in one place, a complex adaptive system, what you and I might know as culture or society. And there they literally pull us into something bigger than ourselves. But we'll come back to that. And that's all great. But when you put it all together, you start to see that dopamine's actually about something more. That is, dopamine's about having goals. Dopamine goes up when we attain the object of our fantasies, but what's interesting is that dopamine goes up when we're doing the fantasizing itself. Anticipation of the reward is almost as pleasurable as experiencing it. And that pleasure, that's not what we thought it was either. Pleasure is actually a subjective rise in motivation, literally dopamine fuel being poured into our veins. Here's Robert Sapolsky with more.
So what do we have here? We have first a signal, the light coming on saying it's one of those sessions. We're starting one of those. Then the monkey does the work, and then with a delay, it gets the reward. And what everyone initially thought was dopamine would go up after the reward. That's not when it goes up. It goes up when the signal comes on. Dopamine is not about pleasure, it's about the anticipation of pleasure. It's about the pursuit of happiness rather than happiness itself. And what's most remarkable is experimentally, if you block that rise of dopamine from occurring, you don't get the work. You don't get the behavior. This is not only the anticipation, but this is what is capable of eliciting goal-directed behavior. And what we see is this astonishing ability of humans to keep those dopamine levels up for decades and decades waiting for the reward. And in the most bizarre, unique realm of this in humans, sometimes we could maintain it with a belief system where the reward doesn't come in our lifetime. The reward comes after our death. The reward comes in our afterlife. The reward comes unto the next generations. And there's no monkey out there who's willing to lever press all the time because of what St. Peter's going to think somewhere down the line.
So let me get this straight. We automatically look forward to things just to sustain our chemical need for motivation and avoid the trap of depression. That means we need to dream, to anticipate, to fantasize, just to put fuel in our mental gas tank, just to keep going. And that explains so many things. Think about ideology, where somebody will sustain a bad dream long after it stopped working, because they spent their entire life building that dream. And they rely on it to sustain their needs, their chemical needs for motivation, to avoid depression. They can't afford to question it. In fact, our need for dopamine explains lots of different behavior, lots of different strategies people can use to keep their dopamine levels high for better or worse. We can look forward to good things like watching a movie.
Dear God, I left the iron plugged in.
Hanging out with friends. Going on dates. Or having sex after them. Then there's things like smoking, which may not be good for your lungs, but it can put fuel in your mental gas tank. When things are going well, we can look forward to healthy things. Or when we're stressed, we can look forward to whatever happens to be around. Our dreams can ground us a little too much in reality.
The government's been in bed with the entire telecommunications industry since the 40s. They've infected everything. They get into your bank statements, your computer files, your email.
And sometimes our dreams can leave us completely ungrounded.
For me and the Lord, we got an understanding.
We're on a mission from God.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
We can look forward to things in the short term, like immediate gratification. And other times we can look forward to long-term, strategic goals.
Start, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
The need to have goals is a double-edged sword. Sure, on the one hand, dopamine can help motivate us, dream for bigger things, turn those dreams into goals, and organize it all with a sense of purpose. But when we can't sustain those goals, our mind and brain suffer. Sometimes the mortgage closes in, the relationship sours, our faith wanes, or a sense of purpose becomes unclear. At times when our future seems most out of reach, we lose the dreams that release dopamine. Voila! We have the chemistry of hopelessness, pessimism, and lack of faith. For instance, when our dreams have too many impediments, when attaining them is too overwhelming, our dreams are like doing a cross-country trip on a half tank of gas. Our brain automatically calculates that we don't have enough fuel for the journey, and our motivation cuts out before it kicks in. We call this ratio strain, when the obstacles outweigh the rewards and we become overwhelmed to the point of being paralyzed. Alternatively, maybe you have goals, but they're just out of reach. Maybe the thing won't do the thing. Your coworkers aren't making life any easier for you. Money just ain't what it used to be. Whatever you do, you can't get out of the friend zone. When you've got plenty of dopamine fuel, but suddenly the road is blocked, now we're talking something else. The chemistry of frustration. Then there's the downer to end all downers. The downward spiral. What can start as mere ennui can get much, much worse. Depression. And that means not wanting to do anything, not being able to feel anything, and not being able to give a shit in general. Which is a problem, because without those, we can't look forward to anything. Without that, we lose our dopamine. Without dopamine, the whole process feeds back on itself. What little ability to dream we had gets taken away. And without that, we have even less dopamine. This tendency for dopamine to feed back on itself, for us to get even more depressed by being depressed, for us to lose motivation to do the things that build motivation, is why we call this little gem the downward spiral. What does all this mean? I'd make the case that it adds up to goal-directed meaning and purpose. Under the threat of depression and other nasty things, dopamine forces us to have a meaningful relationship with the world. Dopamine doesn't just make the world feel good, it makes us dream about the world. It shapes how we perceive the world across space and time. It helps turn the world into a story. And as we'll see, that story doesn't just serve us. It pulls us into something bigger than ourselves, a complex adaptive system like culture or society. Serving that is to serve something greater than ourselves, cultural evolution itself. But again, we'll come back to that. In the meantime, you say dopamine's all about meaning and purpose, but isn't dopamine supposed to be pretty self-serving? Isn't dopamine like the hedonism chemical? It's all about pleasure and what scientists call drive reduction? Which is to say, basically our goals serve to make our needs go away. Because let's face it, it sucks to always want more. Using this rationale, dopamine would seem to support an ethos of hedonism or happiness, because both are about quenching a thirst for pleasure. But here's the thing. Dopamine isn't about hedonism or happiness. Dopamine isn't about making our drives go away. As we've seen, dopamine's about a lot more than pleasure. It's about a need for goal-directed meaning. Why? Because no matter what we do, we can't make our needs for dopamine go away. Get a good grade on your report card? Start studying for the next test. Get a pay raise? The next day, you're eyeing your colleague's paycheck. Finally get a boyfriend. Immediately start planning the wedding. Hit your goal weight? Move the goalposts. We don't have a choice. We have to evolve a deeper, more sustainable relationship with the source of all our dopamine activity, the world around us. After all, it's the social world that provides our most stable dopamine. Learning, fun, status, accomplishment, other things. Dopamine is evolution wanting us to chase all those things and more. Dopamine needs and drives don't exist to make us feel good. They invest us in the world, a social world, because our ability to sustain our dopamine is tied in with the fate of that social world. Which is why as we mature, what starts out as narcissistic dreams for personal gain naturally evolve into dreams of bettering the world around us, because that world affects us. Dopamine forces us to evolve the social world around us because we're connected to it and the dopamine it provides. And as we'll see in later videos, that literally means pulling us into something bigger than ourselves. So, what kind of chemical is dopamine? Dopamine gives us a chemical need to interact with the world, a chemical imperative to string together goal after goal in bigger and bigger visions of better and better worlds. It does so lest we lose motivation and slip under the waves of the downward spiral. Dopamine is tough love. It threatens to sink us mentally, but only because it wants us to keep evolving our dreams, to make them bigger, deeper, wiser, and more beautiful. Evolution wants us to chase our dreams, because when we do that, we're literally adapting to the future. And that's why we evolve goal-directedness in the first place. Dopamine and goal-directedness are a good thing, because when the force of evolving dreams collides with human culture, we evolve bigger and bigger goals and become more far-seeing and wise, our eye increasingly on the big picture. Dopamine dreams entwine our fate with the world in a relationship we call meaning. Dopamine isn't about hedonism or even happiness. Happiness comes when we attain something bigger, meaning. And meaning happens when dopamine dreams push us to evolve our collective imagination, to become our greatest selves, and to serve something bigger. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Morgan. This has been FrameShift.org. We'll see you next time.